Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking Ballax podcast. Once again, joined by Euan. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm okay. How are you? You good?
Yeah, honestly, mate, I'm recovering still after last week. I'm still not back up to 100%. So we apologise that we were not here last week. So we thought we'd redo our show that we scheduled for last week. We've got the same two guests that we had planned because we messed them around, so we felt like we owed them a little bit. First of all, joined by Harry from ScarfeySpursTalk. The first time on the pod. Harry, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. It's great to be here. Like you say, my first time now. Really looking forward to this one. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, cheers. Anyone who hasn't, I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to put links to Harry's YouTube channel and stuff in the description for our YouTube channel. Really good. You've taken off massively this year, haven't you? Like, got a huge following. You're close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube now.
Yeah, very close, 40 away. But the thing that's amazing is because I rebranded in February, and when I rebranded in February, it was less than 300 subs. So if you'd asked me in February, that would be, before the end of the summer, talking about 1K subs, I would have probably turned around and laughed. So the transition, the turnover has been very good, and very happy with that. So yeah, it's great. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
No, it's good. It's testament to your hard work, mate. Honestly, I've been checking out your content since we started speaking like a couple of weeks ago. It's really good stuff. So yeah, keep it up, mate.
You're doing something right, mate.
Yeah, and also joined by Jake Watson, host of the Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast and regular on TalkSport. So Jake, how are you?
Yeah, guys, I'm not too bad, and yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for being here. Honestly, both of you, thanks for giving up your evenings. Jake, you've got I thought I'd get this in there for you as well. You've got a live show coming up, haven't you, at Memphis in Leicester? What's that about?
Yeah, so it's a little bit surreal, to be honest. The Big Strong Leicester Boys live. So started the podcast this year, and it's done really well. Been really pleased with the reaction, and it was suggested by a few people that we should do a live podcast. So it's all for charity. We've booked out the Memphis studio in Leicester in Wigston. And tickets are available for it. I think it's £5 a ticket or around that, I think. So all the money goes to charity. We're going to have live music. Going to have a couple of Leicester legends with us as well. And it is at the end of July, I think July 29th. But if you stick a link, it's I should have probably got those details correct by now. I'm fairly certain it's July 29th. And it'd be good to see some people there. Tickets are genuinely, I'm not just saying this, selling pretty well, quite fast. Don't miss out. It should be good fun.
Yeah, I'll put anyone who is interested in buying tickets. I'm going to put that in the link on both YouTube and Spotify. So should be a really good night. And again, similar to what I said to Harry, that's testament to how good the podcast has been this year. I think a lot of people in a very, very tough year for Leicester fans have really enjoyed your work, Jake. So yeah, keep it up next season because I really enjoy it. So.
It's weird though, isn't it? Because as crap and as bad as Leicester have been, people have found the podcast, and not just our one, but similar. When things aren't going well, they look to podcasts, they look to that kind of thing. Or you ring up TalkSport, don't you, when your team's lost because you're angry and you want to vent. So by Leicester being crap, we've actually kind of enjoyed then success as a byproduct of that on the podcast. So it'll be really interesting to see next year when we're not in the Premier League. So wonder if obviously fewer people are interested, and then also if we start winning games again, if that's kind of almost becomes a little bit boring for people. So I think next season will be the true test, the difficult second season, Jack, is what we'll call it. So we're waiting.
Leicester's version of Arsenal Fan TV, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I don't like the comparison, but
no insults intended to anyone involved there.
No, but I use the same kind of comparison loosely that AFTV was popular because people like to see people get angry. We don't tend to get angry. I mean, Ric Flair does get angry, but the rest of us try and stay relatively
it's also passion as well, though, isn't it? It's
exactly that.
You can't help but care. You can't help it.
Exactly that. Yeah. So it's cathartic, isn't that's the word?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think. Well, that's basically how we started. Like we used to message and ring each other all the time and just rant at each other about stuff, and then we were like, "Should we turn it into a
record it?"
Yeah. So, but so honestly, both of you doing really good work. So keep it up. Honestly, it's really good stuff. So. Yes. I set the boys a task, obviously coming on as first-time guest, and obviously I sent it to Euan as well. But the latest name linked to Saudi Arabia was one that both surprised me, but also was all too unsurprising, and that was Damari Gray linked with a £35 million transfer to Saudi Arabia. And that got me thinking, and hopefully it got the boys thinking as well. But some players are surely destined for a move to Saudi Arabia at the moment. We've had a mix of sort of good players in their prime, like Ruben Neves, like older players coming towards the end of their careers.
Yeah.
But what players are destined to play in Saudi Arabia? Harry, I'll start with you. Who did you come up with? Who did you think is a player that you just look at and you go, whether it's for money reasons or age, you just thought, yeah, there's gonna be interest there?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I went away and thought about it when you put that, forward for me. And you look, I think Chelsea, I think they've done it in a good way. They've made lots of money from players going out to Saudi Arabia. And I've looked at our squad here at Tottenham and going that we need a rebuild. That's not just players coming in, players coming out. And players, for example, the likes of Davinson Sanchez, who made it pretty, or Hugo Lloris, who made it pretty clear that they want to leave the club. I think a move to Saudi Arabia would obviously, for the money for them, maybe for their personal careers as well. But Chelsea, especially Todd Bowley, has been criticised a lot, and rightly so. I think some of the decisions he's made, the money that's been spent. For example, sacking Tuchel, not giving maybe Potter as much time. But one thing that he has got right is this idea. He started with Saudi Arabia and the amount of money Chelsea have got. He's very, very clever. And one thing that was important for Chelsea this window is that they got players out got players coming in to make that squad smaller and the players that Pochettino wants. So I think Chelsea have definitely done it in the right way and made lots of money in the end. I don't know how much you add up to the end, but it's going to be quite a bit. Going over to Saudi Arabia, we've seen lots of different players go out there, and there may be more as well. So individual players, like I said, there's like Sanchez, Lloris in particular for Tottenham, but I think any player that is struggling in the Premier League, perhaps wants to revive their career. Harry Winks is another potential one. If he doesn't go to the Championship, he may look for a move to Saudi Arabia.
By all accounts, he's coming to us at the moment, Harry. That's the
again, that's a possibility. But Harry Winks will want first team football. So there's a few players that I think will be looking. They'll look at, especially Chelsea, the players that have gone out there to look for the money they've gone for, the money that Chelsea have made from them. So many players now that have gone to Saudi Arabia from Chelsea. So if you're a club, a chairman, it helps you financially, and also as a player, that wage, that high salary. So I'm sure there's many that'll be looking to go out to Saudi Arabia this summer.
I think Hugo Lloris is a great shout, actually. I'd kind of forgotten about him. I think with him, it kind of dropped off massively after 2018 World Cup. I feel like his stock's fallen massively. So I think he's a good shout, actually. Yeah, I hadn't thought about Lloris, to be fair. But Jake, who did you come up with? Is anyone similar? Was it like Spurs, Chelsea players, or someone else even more obscure?
No, I mean, actually, it's really quite similar to Hugo Lloris, but I think David De Gea is actually the one. Yeah. If you think about it, that there's talks at the moment, isn't there, about a new contract, but Man United want to give him a new contract, but they're pretty reluctant to. Well, they've offered him significantly less than what he's currently on, so they're kind of stuck, aren't they, Man United, in that they kind of don't want to let him go. But equally, why is he going to sign a new contract for less money? I actually think, like many, that De Gea has seen his best days. And again, when you're used to earning that kind of money, you're just not going to accept a pay cut, are you? Unless you absolutely have to. So I think best case scenario is he gets moved to Saudi Arabia. So he carries on earning the big money that he's already on. And then Manchester United have a solution of moving on somebody who's perhaps past their best. So, I'm going to throw out De Gea.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent shout as well. Again, another one I hadn't thought of, to be fair. I was going for some more obscure-sided players, but I think that's a really good shout, both of them. Euan, who did you go for?
I've got four.
Four? I've done a lot of research.
Aubameyang.
Yeah.
Just because, obviously, he's known to be a man of the money, isn't he? He kind of does chase that a little bit. It hasn't really worked out since he's come back. So I could see that happening. Obviously, he doesn't seem to have a specific purpose at the minute. He's not really the 9. He's not really involved in any of the squads. So yeah, I can see that. Lingard's another one. Free agent.
That's a good shout. That's a great shout.
I feel like he would quite enjoy the glamour of it. If there is like I don't want to say Super League, but you know what I mean, like an up and coming league that's bringing over players that have pedigree. I think Jesse Lingard probably fancies himself as one of those players who could still go there. I think he's 30. He could still go there and actually make a difference and probably have an impact over there. Then I've got Coutinho maybe, because
it's a good shout.
Villa's wage turnover is really, really high, and although they have got Europe and it will increase slightly, they actually need to kind of get players out to get players in. So Pau Torres is obviously linked. He's not going to come in on small money. Coutinho, is he going to be playing that much under Emery? I'm not so sure. He doesn't really strike me as an Emery type player. He likes playing like a very rigid formation. Coutinho's not really that. So I could see that. And then the last one's Jeff Hendrick. I think that Jeff Hendrick would be great for 20 million quid to try and maybe help out Newcastle a little bit. And I'm sure Jeff would love it out in Saudi. I'm sure it's a really lovely place to go and enjoy himself. So yeah, that's probably my four. That's
one hell of a career path, isn't it? It's like, was it like Derby, Burnley, Newcastle, and then Saudi Arabia? That's a decent career path. But that's I did not think Jeff Hendrick was going to make an appearance on the podcast this evening.
Give us yours.
So I had like 3 players that I thought might, and I think Harry might agree with me on one, but it depends on what happens with Kane, I think. But I think Richarlison has got Saudi Arabia written all over him. Whether it be this year or I think Richarlison, because I mean, unless Kane leaves and he becomes the focal point of the team at Spurs, I think he's got Saudi Arabia written all over him. Another one I had that was a little bit left field was Dele Alli. I feel like he's potentially got on like a free or something like that. And another one I had was Idrissa Gueye from Everton. I feel like he might be one that potentially moves over there, but I literally it's guesswork, isn't it? I couldn't tell you who's going to end up over there or not, but I kind of went for those 3. I thought Richarlison. I think he's just got it all written all over him, money, and I feel like he'll do all right over there. I can't really tell you that much about the Standard. I don't watch many games, to be fair.
A lot of the South Americans don't mind doing that, though, do they? You look at Oscar's still out in China, isn't he? He's now a Chinese citizen. A lot of them don't necessarily mind it. Anderson Talisca as well. He's gone out and he's playing with Ronaldo. I think they kind of enjoy that less pressure side of it because they've grown up with it all their lives, and I think they think, well, I've made it now. I'm going to go and make my money because when I go back, I can retire and have a proper retirement.
Yeah. To be fair, Oscar was such a like waste of talent when he's such a good player. I mean, he probably still is a good player, but he was a real. He kind of reminded me of Ruben Neves. Now he's gone to Saudi Arabia. Like I felt like Oscar was in a really good reign of form when he went to China. That's why I was kind of surprised. It's a bit similar to Ruben Neves. But what
now? I've actually thought of another couple of players that could go to Saudi Arabia if you don't mind me sharing.
Yeah, go on, Harry.
One of them is Ndombele at Tottenham. If it doesn't work out under Postecoglou, I think that will work, and potentially also Azpilicueta of Chelsea. I think could be another Chelsea player that goes over to Saudi Arabia. I can see that happening. I think he wants to leave Chelsea. But with Tottenham, it'd probably be the case of either Ndombele or Lo Celso. One of them goes. I reckon it'd be more Ndombele. Whether Postecoglou likes him or not, but I think that has Ndombele, like Richarlison written all over it. I think it has Ndombele written all over it as well. With Richarlison, for me this summer, I think it's the club are looking at both Kane and Richarlison, thinking they both could potentially leave, especially Kane here. So the one of them will probably go. And one will probably stay. In an ideal world, you have both who stay, you have that backup, interchange potentially as the front two. But the links with Kane to Bayern today have moved very, very quickly and are very worrying actually because they've come out of the blue. And there's whether you believe it or not, there's possibilities tonight that already a personal agreement has been reached and already the price is close to being found. So it's a bit of a worry.
Yeah. I think there's still probably quite a long way off the valuation that Levy sees, but that's quite a nice little segue into what I wanted to talk about next. So, Jake, I'll come to you because I wanted to just talk about things that are very much in the pipelines at the moment. But Leicester today, but we brought in Maresca, and we'll get onto that when we dive into the main body of the podcast. But we brought in Maresca, and everyone was kind of, it's a big risk. Everyone was quite excited about it, but then it kind of tailed off a little bit because there was no real movement either way after that.
Yeah.
Today, suddenly there's been really heavy links for Winks and Cody, and obviously put forward by quite reputable sources. Do you think they're the sort of players we should be looking at? I know that Rick was Rick caused a storm on Twitter earlier, didn't he? By just having a go at everyone who said it was a good signing. But I agreed to him to a point, but only on the wages. So how do you feel about those kind of players?
I'm actually Team Rick here. I'd be really disappointed with the Harry Winks signing, but really happy with the Connor Cody signing. And I tweeted as such that, Leicester have kind of spent the last however many months trying to shift out and move on a group of overpaid, undermotivated footballers who didn't really have much to prove. And we've now gone down the route of Enzo Maresca, which I think we're all happy with, because the alternative was maybe a less inspiring proven manager, but that proven manager has already proven what his ceiling is. But we don't know what the ceiling of Enzo Maresca is, which is why we're exciting. So we want to see players that come in that we don't know what their ceiling is. Now, of course, there's always an element of risk with that, isn't there? Because they might turn out to be shit. Whereas with Harry Winks, it's very safe, isn't it? And that's the word you probably put around his entire career and the way that he plays football. He's just very, very safe. And I think the kind of people who get excited by watching Harry Winks play football are probably the same people who would pick a pack of ready sorted crisps out of a multi-pack. Do you know what I mean? He's just fine, you know? And he's 27, so he's not particularly old. And he probably does have a point to prove, because he hasn't played now Premier League football for a little while. He's been out in Sampdoria. But then, again, even if he is back in the Premier League, do we really want him? I'd say probably not. And also, he's not going to be cheap, because the contract he's on at Spurs, again, he's not going to be one of the big earners, obviously, but still, you're talking probably 50,000 plus. And it's just not really a route I want to see Leicester go down. But with Connor Cody, because I then don't want to contradict myself and sound hypocritical, I think it's different, because Connor is now genuinely 30 plus, and his Premier League days probably are now gone. But what Connor Cody is he's a leader. And what Leicester have lacked through the last couple of years is real leaders. He's everything basically Johnny Evans should have been. Yeah. And it's a signing which is 12 months too late. And I can just think that he would be absolutely outstanding leading the back line in the Championship and bring in some actual leadership and steal to a team which has been pretty pathetic, to be honest, over the last couple of years. So for me, it's a yes for Cody and a no for Winks, but I think both will happen.
Yeah, I think I was kind of torn. I replied to Rick saying that I think Winks he's a good signing, but when you think about the outlay that there will be for him, whether it be wages or transfer fee, there's not going to be that much reward. He's a good player. He'll keep us on the ball well. He'll keep the possession ticking over. But is he going to get goals and assists? Is he going to be the player that drags us up the table? Probably not. Harry, as somebody who's probably watched Winks regularly, I don't think that signing a player from Spurs is anything to be sniffed at, but I completely understand what Jake's saying. Do you kind of agree with him, or do you think, having watched him regularly, that we're maybe being a little bit harsh on him there?
I partly agree. I agree with Jake in terms of, he's a very, very safe player, and that does describe his career, keeps the ball well. I think he will be a good addition to Leicester in terms of that midfield. But if you're thinking you've got James Maddison and Tielemans, a possibility of them both leaving, Maddison, heavy links with Tottenham. So Leicester will ideally need a replacement in that midfield. I think Winks, like you said, has a point to prove. I think Championship football will suit him. He has, he was not on a high wage for Spurs, but he won't be someone on a small wage. I'm thinking around that 40,000 a week mark.
I've just checked.
In terms of the initial price as well, at the moment, I think Spurs, I believe, especially, will be probably holding out to get 10, 15 million on him, maybe even more. Who knows?
Jake shaking his head there. I'd rather go and sign someone like Elias Share for that.
I'd say the only crumb of comfort I'd have from it, and again, that's probably a little bit harsh, is if it was a loan signing. If it's a loan signing, fine. But if we're paying £10 million upwards for Harry Winks, not for me. I'd rather spend the money elsewhere. There's a short-term option because we need bodies in there. Then fine. There's positives to be taken away from that deal. But a permanent signing, 3 years, 4 years at 10, 15 million pounds is I just don't think that's where the club should be going.
I think it's also a risk for Leicester to take, because he was injured for most of the time in Sampdoria. Hardly got any minutes. I mean, it didn't work out for him at Tottenham towards the end. So I think a word to describe Winks at the moment would obviously be, as you would expect, rusty. And I don't know if Leicester will take that risk with paying more than they could get for somebody else on a slightly higher wage, taking that risk with the contract as well. Obviously, a loan would be more sensible. I think he's a player who would improve. I think he would improve Leicester and be a perfect fit for the Championship. But there's other players around you could probably get for a cheaper price or perhaps a bit safer option. But with Connor Cody, I think that's a perfect signing. And like you said, Jay, he had to come in 12 months ago. We knew the defence was a problem for Leicester. Connor Cody, leader, and I think naturally improves that defence. I think he did with Everton. And I do still think that he's got it. And I think that if Leicester are looking one area to improve, it's got to be that defence.
Yeah, I think you're right there,
I
Harry.
think the Winks situation will have a massive impact on Maddison and Tielemans, whether they go or stay. Winks might have something to do with the Maddison deal potentially, but for Leicester, I think they're both good signs, but particularly Conor Cody.
Yeah, I think that kind of what I'm going to do, because I'm just conscious of time. We haven't got Harry for that long tonight, so I'm going to just go. I'm going to stick with Maddison there, because we talked about Maddison going the other way. Euan obviously being the other third-party member of this saga, you can obviously weigh in when you want to. But we'll dive into the main body of the podcast now, because I think it's just a good little segue. So obviously we've seen a lot of people, and Euan and I kind of, I don't want to say the word disgusted, but we kind of are, by the fact that everyone seems to be predicting the Premier League table and things already when nothing's happened in the summer. So we thought we'd like strip it back a little bit and try and predict what we think is going to happen in the summer, but for our clubs. But I think we'll start with Spurs. Obviously, you brought in Big Ange from Celtic. Like, I think it's a risky yet almost risk-free managerial appointment.
He's a good manager.
I think he is. I think you're right, but then it's the step up from Celtic to Leicester has proven to be a reasonable challenge for Rodgers over the. I mean, he got 4 years, granted, but there's going to be more expectation.
Fair.
True, but then he's also been heavily responsible in getting relegated.
No, absolutely. But I think Spurs, if you set the Spurs, Ange has 4 years and wins a trophy.
But happy.
But the expectation going into Spurs is going to be much higher. So we'll start with that, Harry. How do you feel about Postecoglou, and what do you think he's got to do? What do you think is the first sort of thing that he needs to try and sort out for the club? Like,
yeah, crikey, has he got a lot to do? I think he's taken over a club that, it's a sinking ship basically, and you've got to keep it alive, and it's pretty much an impossible task. But I think this move is risk free, just purely because of the fact that we're outside of Europe. He hasn't got that pressure of playing in Europe and getting humiliated in Europe, which has been a common thing, especially in the Europa League and the Conference League for us, sadly. So I think that will help him, and I think that although there's no European money to help with the rebuild, he can concentrate on the league. He can concentrate on like the FA Cup, for example, which I'm sure he takes seriously. It's one of the reasons he's been brought in. He'll work with the academy, because right now the gap between the first team and the academy at Tottenham is very, very big. Someone myself who's praised the work that Paratici done when he was here. One thing, the problem he has caused is that gap has increased between the youth academy and that first team. That's an issue he wants to address. The defence is another issue he definitely wants to address. We've got probably as many players that need to go. I hate to use Edward, but I think it has to be used in this situation. So for me, it's more of a priority of getting players out before you bring players in. Do what Chelsea have done. I actually think they've done it the right way. Obviously today, this evening, we announced the signing of a Vicario, the goalkeeper. I have mixed feelings on that, because although it's a goalkeeper and I hear good things from him over in Italy for Empoli, I did want David Raya, and the reason we haven't signed him because we wouldn't pay that 40 million. Personally, I think 40 million for a Premier League proven and English goalkeeper, he's definitely realistic, and I think he's typical Tottenham, typical Daniel Levy, should I say, not paying that. Lots of Spurs fans say, he's not worth 40 million, but I can sit here and hold my hands up. He is worth 40 million. We've seen Kepa go for a bigger price, Alisson go for a bigger price. So I think Brentford were right to hold out on that 40 million. So hopefully it does work out, but we have definitely gone for the cheaper option, whether it be as good as. We signed Kulusevski permanently. So it's been a good start to the transfer window, but nobody's left the club yet. And that's a problem, because we sit here every year going, this player's still here. You get the Sanchez's, the Dyers who hold on to these contracts every year, on the high wage, aren't doing a fantastic job, and they need to leave for their own personal careers. So it's time. What we need to do now is, before we bring anyone else in, I think we've got to get players now up the door. Lloris needs to go out the door, like we said, potentially to Saudi Arabia. But with Postecoglou, it's a risk-free appointment, but he's got a tough task, put it that way, with Kane potentially leaving, Lloris potentially leaving. There's a lot going on around him. There's a lot of unsettlement with the fans, the owners still. So still in the crisis.
Sorry, Harry. Does it not make you feel like that's a little bit of a free hit? Because everything you've said there makes me think that your expectations compared to previous seasons are not rock bottom, but they are as low as they've probably been for maybe 10 years. So, for instance, you've just mentioned about players leaving. You've mentioned about ex-managers such as Pochettino, who I really rate and think is a phenomenal manager, didn't win anything. Conte didn't win anything. Mourinho didn't win anything. You've got a manager who's come in off the back of winning a lot of things in clubs he's been in around the world. I know they're not all the greatest standard. So you're talking Japan, you're talking Australia, you're talking Scotland. I think he even did it internationally. He's got that track record in terms of going, and he got the same reaction at Celtic when he first went there as he's got coming in at Spurs. Is this not made for him to actually go in and go, do you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to prove a point. I
hope so. But
on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very similar situation for when he joined Celtic in terms of the fans aren't really sure about the appointment. He comes in, Celtic in a bit of a state. They've been left in a state by previous manager Neil Lennon. There's a bit of tension between the fans and the owners. Postecoglou, he won the treble. That speaks for itself. But obviously it's a different standard though in Scotland. But he set the fans down, and they didn't want him to leave. In the end,
I think he lost one old firm as well out of something like 11.
That's a great record.
Considering Gerrard, obviously, I know Gerrard's probably not the best example, but he went to Scotland and did do very well. Whether you think he's a good manager or not, I'm not so convinced. He did a very good job, and Ange went in and made a statement, and he won the things he had to win. So I think as long as you give him time, I think there's definite positives.
Yeah, Ange definitely needs time. And like you said, with the expectations, they are lower than, he's sad, but they've been lower than they have been in the last 3 years for sure. Because I recognise it's the first time in 14 years, which is the first time in my life, by the way, that we haven't finished in Europe, which is obviously it's a big thing for us because we expected to finish in Europe, especially at the start of the season, with Conte having that full season off the back of us getting top four. And I'm guilty of it. I sat here at the start of the last season going, if Conte can get us top four with less than half a season, imagine what he can do with a transfer window. We're talking about a transfer window that we spent about 130 million as well. Whether it was spent wisely or not is completely other discussion. So there's high hopes going into that season, and up until the World Cup, it seemed very, very good in the top three, in the race with Arsenal, in the race with City. It looked very, very good, and it just went all downhill. I think since the World Cup for whatever reason. You ended up finishing 8th. Conte was sat when we were 3rd, ended up finishing 8th. It's a bit of a disaster. But my expectations for this season is really just to get us back in Europe. I'd like to go on a cup run in the FA Cup. Let's say, if you said to me, finish 7th and get to the quarterfinal or the semi-final of the FA Cup, I'd be happy with that because it's progress. It's improvement on last season. He needs time, for sure. And
what's your opinions on Maddison coming in? Because obviously, it literally has been us and you for the last however long, and I think me and Jack have spoke a lot.
Yeah. Sorry to jump in there. I was actually going to speak to Jake about that because Jake made a really, really good point on Twitter earlier, where he said this is two clubs that are very stubborn, very slow with the way they do their business. Yeah. I can see this Maddison saga, same as you, I think, Jake, dragging out across the summer. How do you? I mean, do you think, Jake? Do you think that Spurs cough up the money? Do you think Leicester bow at all, or do you think this is just going to drag on?
A few things. First of all, I'd throw in the fact there's two clubs, but I would say that Newcastle aren't now one of them. I don't think Newcastle are in the running anymore. I think they've turned their attentions elsewhere. They've balked at the price tag, and obviously they've signed Sandro Tonali. So I don't think Newcastle are in for him anymore. But I do think that Man City are, and I genuinely do think they are. So what Spurs need to do is be really careful, because James wants to actually go to London. He wants to join Spurs. He's keen for that move. It was always his preference over Newcastle. If Newcastle hadn't got Champions League football, then he wouldn't have even been interested. So there was talks last year from Newcastle, and I can assure you he did not want to make that move. The only thing was that if there wasn't another big club that came in for him and Newcastle had Champions League football, then yes, he would have gone. But the reality is he's got an offer on the table potentially from Spurs, and he's got twins on the way, and he's got a little boy as well. He doesn't want to uproot and go all the way up to Newcastle. He just doesn't. He's very kind of homely guy. Whatever your perceptions of James Maddison may or may not be, he doesn't want to move too far away from home. So I think your two clubs are Spurs and Man City. Obviously, at the moment, Spurs are actually, front runners and comfortably so. And apparently Leicester have lowered the asking price, because I think it was too high initially. But I think that one of the main reasons Spurs are going for James Maddison is because they see this as the cheap option. They see Leicester have been relegated, and they see that Maddison have 1 year left in his contract. So Daniel Levy sat there thinking, "Oh, I can probably get him for 20 million quid," which is just completely nonsense. So I think I'm not sure it will happen, because I don't know what the offer is from Spurs. But I would suspect, because Leicester notoriously ask really high and Spurs go really low, I'd imagine they're a million miles apart still. I genuinely do. So while Leicester have probably softened their stance a little bit, I can't see Spurs going for it unless they again notoriously do stuff on deadline day. Because I know for a fact, Daniel Levy has said he believes the best deals happen late in the window. And Leicester don't want that to happen. They want the players out as quickly as possible, so they've got some funds and they can reinvest that in the squad for the Championship. So then the big factor then in all of this is what happens to Bernardo Silva. If Bernardo Silva leaves Man City, I honestly think that Pep will go for James Maddison. And we know with Man City, they don't fuck about. If they want a player and they bid for a player, it's a serious bid, and they tend to get the job done. And I think they'll do the same thing with Declan Rice. So, if Bernardo Silva goes and Maddison ends up at Man City, Spurs fans should kick themselves, just like Arsenal fans should kick themselves if they don't get Declan Rice, because there's a deal there to be done. The player wants to go there. You know what the valuation is. You've got the money. Just sort it out.
Yeah, I think these clubs have got to be really smart about it, because the problem is, as soon as City enter the conversation, City have got no problem with the money. It's whether the player wants to go there, and that's the thing. When Arsenal and Spurs are there counting out their pennies, going like, right, how much can we? Like City will just go like put the money down on the table, like they did with Grealish, like they did with Haaland, like they'll do with whatever other players they sign this summer, and whenever the players they'll sign in the future, they'll just go, okay, you want that much? Not quite. They'll do a little bit less haggling because they'll be happy to pay the money because they can. And this is where, like you said, Jake, if Arsenal miss out on Rice, who is, in my opinion, somewhat overrated, but also one of the best players in the Premier League at the moment, he would improve most of the teams that he would go to. The only one he probably doesn't improve straight away is Man City. Everyone else he'd go to, he would improve. Same with Maddison. I think most of the teams other than Man City he would go to, he would improve straight away. Like, obviously, like the question with Maddison, I find, though, is if he goes to Spurs and Kane stays, I think that's an unbelievable combination. But if he goes to Spurs and Kane leaves, are you stronger or weaker?
Weaker.
I think you're losing. Arguably, you and Euan, like me saying this, arguably the best striker the Premier League seen. But I think you're right. I think they have to be really careful, and I think that's one of the assurances that Spurs might have to sell Maddison is go, if you want to come to us, you're going to be playing with Kane. You're going to be providing for Kane. You're not going to be providing for Richarlison.
And just to jump onto that is exactly that. And I think Maddison and Kane, I think, will be an unbelievable partnership. But the only reason we're sitting here now talking of a possibility of James Maddison's going to Tottenham is because Leicester got relegated.
Yeah,
it's the same with Ward-Prowse. We were linked with him as soon as Southampton relegated. The link started. It didn't exist before that. It's funny that, and it's always the same because. Obviously the price tag will be higher, but Levy would have looked to that and he would look towards the end. He would have waited, and when Leicester were relegated, he'd go, right, I can go and get you. It's the same with Harvey Barnes. We have never been, I don't think, linked with Harvey Barnes as much anyway as before until Leicester have now gone down. So it's clever. I don't know what the price will be in the end, but Tottenham will start very, very low. We're talking ridiculous 15, 20 million, which we know Maddison's probably worth at least double that. So we know what Daniel Levy is like. He's just like that. But I'm sure Maddison will want to play with Kane. But I don't think where we would be without Kane, even with Maddison, because without Kane's goals, last season we would have finished 14th, and without Kane's goals, assists, or any contribution in a build-up to goal, we would have finished 17th. After that win against Leeds, we would have stayed up by a point. That's without Harry Kane, and people say that's with 10 men. But with Richarlison instead of him, we'll talk about a man who's got one Premier League goal this season. So we'd be in trouble, basically. It'd definitely be for sure a bottom half finish last season without Kane, even with that 11th man. So it's definitely a worry for Spurs, because we talk about this rebuild under Postecoglou and a potential rebuild maybe without Kane. It is worrying because, we want to improve and get back into Europe. Does that happen without Kane? But at the same time, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say it because lots of Spurs fans sit here and go, "Oh, if Kane wants to leave, then shame on him," or anything like that. But if Kane leaves, I can say now that's probably the best choice for his personal career. I think he's been let down by the club. I think he's been let down by Daniel Levy. I think he deserves to be winning trophies and titles every season, and he's not going to do that. But Tottenham, definitely not in the next 5 years, and Kane can't wait. Clearly can't wait that long. Pochettino asked for a rebuild, 2019. We'll talk about top manager, probably the best we've had in recent years. He asked for a rebuild. Harry Kane's name was mentioned 7 times in that. Levy didn't think we needed it, and we're in the same situation now, very funny enough, 4 or 5 years later, where a rebuild is needed, and it's needed around Harry Kane. So we could have saved ourselves a lot of money in this problem, but hey-ho. Yeah. But yeah, James Maddison, we're waiting to see if Kane stays or not. I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on that. But if you'd asked me this morning, would I be worried? I would have said, no, Kane's going to stay. Not worried at all. But the fact that in a few hours, how quickly, that is, the links have, you start with a few links this morning, but it's really, really picked up to the point where personal terms, some saying personal terms have been agreed or nearly agreed. And a Bayern apparently already put the first bid in. I think it's something like 70 million with add-ons. Tottenham want potentially 100. So, do you know what I mean? It's narrower than already. Before the window opened, it was Tottenham want a lot higher, blah, blah, blah. There's a big, 50 million gap. I already feel it's narrowing. So it's definitely a worry. But if you're Kane, I hate to say it, but you move away from Spurs.
Yeah, I think really long term, he needs to. So we will see how that unfolds. Obviously, Harry, I'm aware we are pushed for time. So I will jump straight to this. Very, very early prediction based on kind of what you think, what would be a successful first season for Postecoglou? Just summarize that for us, nice and concise. Like, what would be a good first season for Postecoglou?
A good first season for Postecoglou would be progress, and that would be an improvement on paper. Simple as that from last season. So if we look at it from last season, it was the fact where we got to the knockouts of the Champions League. We got to that FA Cup. We got to that stage as well, equivalent, and ended up finishing 8th with no European football at all. So progress and a successful season will still be finished 7th and improving the cup run. For example, let's say we finish 7th, we get to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup or the quarterfinal of the League Cup. That for me represents progress. Excuse me, because it's an improvement on last year. So I'm happy with that. So lots of Spurs fans will sit here and go, "I'll get back into top 4, get back in the Europa League," but that's just not realistic because of where we are. And I get quite slated on Twitter a lot for using the word entitlement when it comes to our fans, and that is the same situation with the Harry Kane situation. We deserve Harry Kane. Harry Kane should be staying. I really don't think so. I think fans think that we're in a better place or we're better than we really are because we're struggling. We had a poor last season, and we got lots of problems. And Kane will be sitting there. I deserve better. I mean, not getting European football, that is just criminal for Harry Kane's sake. Progress. Postecoglou would just be an improvement from last season. Say it now, finish 7th. I'll be happy because it's European football. I think expectations of fans to finish 4th or 5th is a bit ambitious. It's sad because in a year we've gone from can we challenge on to Conte with a full window, and I think us fans had every right to question that because if Conte done, I keep saying I think it's a miracle that he got us into top 4 because Mourinho couldn't do that. And Mourinho actually had more time as well, but Conte done that. And with a full season, with that transfer window where we spent more than we have, it's rare for Levy to go out to Bahamas, ask for 150 million, come back and spend 130 million of it. We'll talk about players we signed like Basuma or Richarlison. So we signed players for sure. So big letdown last season. So any improvement is fantastic. So and progress is all that's asked for.
Brilliant. Thank you, Harry. So what I'm going to do, because again, Jake, I'm aware you are also pushed for time, but more in terms of your early start in the morning. I'm going to jump into Leicester now. I was going to do Newcastle first, so Euan, we'll hold on to that because we can chew the fat on that as much as we want. And we always do because we have a really terrible knack of timings on the show. We are awful at it. Stick with us. We're going to work on timings for next year. But Jake.
Yes.
Obviously, me and you could probably have this conversation all night if we had the time. But Leicester, appointed Maresca, finally looking to get players in the door. several players have left now on like out of contract. What's the expectation for next season? Do you think that the expectation is to bounce straight back up, or do you think it's steady the ship, go again? What would you say is the minimal expectation for next year? Like your opinion, not generic. Like what do you think?
Yeah.
Like,
well, obviously the clubs will be for both. To be honest, Jack, is to steady the ship and get promoted. I think that's what the club will be looking at. Look, I mean, I'm probably siding on the more negative side of things at the moment in terms of the running of the football club. You know, I do, if I'm brutally honest, have very little faith in the people who do the dealings at the club. I think we almost fell on Maresca by accident. I think that, well, it's my understanding, you know, how much that means, I'm not too sure, that actually their first option was Scott Parker. And it was only the fact they couldn't negotiate a contract was how he ended up with Enzo Maresca. So whilst I'm happy with the fact we've got Maresca, I think they went for Parker. And if we're sat here, you know, talking about our window as Scott Parker as the manager, Harry Winks as the midfielder, it then just goes down that really kind of safe and boring route, which doesn't excite anyone, to be completely honest. So I'm happy with Maresca. I am trying to be positive here. Trying. I think we just have to wait and see with the dealings, because there's still so much that needs to happen. You know, we're talking about Maddison as if he's already gone. He hasn't gone. Yeah. You know, and I've got a sneaking suspicion this is going to drag all the way through the window. Yeah, you know, so whilst we kind of want to sit here and talk about the championship and having all these new players in and looking ahead to a new start, I think that cloud of last season is going to be hanging over us. And, you know, whilst, you know, players like Barnes and Maddison are still there at the football club. So it's really difficult at the moment for me to look at the championship and almost to realise that that's what's happening until all of those other things happen. So yeah, we need a whole brand new team. And I think you can look at the moment that they're going to bring in a few experienced heads, which isn't a bad way to go about things. And then hopefully then litter it with some exciting young players, maybe some loan players from Man City, and then a bit of scouting from abroad. So for me, it's not sitting on the fence. It's just I genuinely do not know, because we have no idea what this team is going to be by the time we kick off on the 4th of August. I've got that feeling, Jack. If we start the season and most of those players that we don't want and don't want to be at the club themselves are still lurking around and hanging around like a bad smell, which has made us then unable to bring in the players that we want, I just think we're going to start the season on the back foot. And it's not an ideal start, is it? I know it's a real crap answer, but I'm going to refrain at the moment in terms of my prediction of how we'll do. Yeah. Because there's so much that they need to get right. And I have very little faith in the people who have to get those things right.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the phone, me and Euan spoke on the phone last night, and I said that my idea of hell would be playing Coventry at home for the first time in, 11 or 12 years, and you've still got those same bodies on the pitch, stinking the place out. Yeah, they'll be well up for it, because not just because it's Leicester Coventry, but they're a good side. Mark Robbins got them playing like a very, very solid game of football. They only didn't get promoted to the Premier League and swap places with us on penalties. They'll be a good side. They'll be well up for it for more reasons than just that it's Leicester. And I've just got this weird image in my head of us being like 2-0 down at home, Maddison being hooked and applauding the Coventry fans and getting pelters from probably Rick. Rick will probably throw his
ticket up on the pitch,
or he'll throw his clapper as far as he can down the patch. But there's just something about that, and I think that's where one thing Maresca's done since coming in is really exciting me. Is one of the first things he said was those players who were here last year who are still going to be here have to change their mentality. And he's come in and said, we've got Leicester are a big club. He hasn't given it the terrible analogy of a Mini versus a Ferrari when we were when both those teams were in the bottom half at that time. So I mean, it's all words at the moment. We haven't seen it put onto the pitch, but does that kind of mindset from Maresca fill you with confidence, or is it still massively outweighed by the lack of competence in the ball?
No, it's absolutely interesting that he did point that out in terms of that mentality. Now, whether that was just him talking in general or something he actually noticed by watching Leicester last season, we're not quite sure, because you know, for us as fans, we watched that last season and saw a team that was, you know, really, really weak mentally, and also a team that when it was in an arm wrestle, in a physical game, against a team that was up for it, like Nottingham Forest. And like you mentioned, games like, against Coventry, it's exactly the kind of game where we'd lose because they just weren't up for the fight. So whether he's seen that and identified that, we'll have to wait and see. If he has, then that's exactly what we want to hear, because that was a massive problem with the way that we played last year. And again, if he then sees players like Cody as being important to kind of changing that mentality within the football club, then it's absolutely the step in the right direction. But yeah, it's a huge change, to make though as well, Jack, when you think about, mentally, when you're losing games week in, week out, and you've got a group of players who don't want to be at the football club, to completely change the mood around the football club, but then has to win each week. It's a big ask. So it'll be really, really interesting. And if you lose then that opening game at home against Cov, then again your kind of fears are already starting. Do you know what I mean? It feels like that cloud is still there. So that opening day of the season, it's so pivotal. I mean, even go back to last season when there was so much doom around last summer, wasn't there? And everyone from outside Leicester was saying, well, I think Leicester might be in trouble this year. And all the Leicester fans said, no, we're fine. We've still got a good squad. We'll be mid-table at least. That was what everyone was saying. And then we were 2-0 up on the first game of the season. Brendan doesn't make any subs. We end up drawing the game 2-2. Then we lose the second one. These are home games against Brentford and Southampton. And literally from that point, everyone goes, oh, fuck. Shit, maybe we are in trouble.
Do you know what, Jack?
They never turned it around again, did they? They never turned it around again. So if you lose the opening game to Cov after what we've just had for the last year, I'm going to start fearing the worst again. And I think everyone else will.
I mean, I've got two anecdotes about those first two games. Like the Brentford one, actually, we did an awards episode as well, similar to you guys.
You?
And we awarded the biggest individual bottle job of the season to Brendan Rodgers' disaster pass against Brentford, because ultimately those 2 points sent us down. If we'd have got those 2 points, we'd have stayed up. Those and also the day that we lost to Southampton, I wasn't actually at the game. We do an annual night out in Newcastle, and we were watching the game, all sat around like in the living room, ready to go out in Newcastle for my mate's birthday, and I could see the game turning in Southampton's favour, and I had to go out and get some more alcohol. There's a shop down the road, and as soon as Southampton equalised, I was like, we're losing this. I said, I'm going to the shop right now. We're losing. I said, it's definitely going to happen. We're throwing this away. And I just went, lads, I'm sorry. Like, I know we're watching Leicester. You're doing it for me, but I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Walked to the shop. Hadn't even got to the shop yet. Got a message from my mate Sam, and it was like 2-1. I was like, and I just went, I fucking knew it. I said it because it was so predictable last season. There was nothing unpredictable about it, was there?
And that's ultimately why Brendan lost his job in the end, because Leicester just became so painfully predictable that, the fans and everyone else could see when Leicester weren't playing well, or when Leicester were no longer on top, and either Brendan didn't have the ability to change it within the game, or the team was so mentally weak that you could just see, if any kind of pressure late on in the game and Leicester were holding on to a result, it was about as bleeding obvious as the day is night that we were going to concede a goal. And, and that was his last game in charge, wasn't it? Against Crystal Palace, a team who hadn't won in God knows how long, who hadn't scored a goal in God knows how long. And they scored in the 94th minute because we just could not see out the game. So yeah, that all kind of then goes back to that mentality, and that was 4 years. We had that for 4 years. That it happened time and time again, where Leicester could just not see out a result. And so again, changing that mentally, psychologically within the team, because the players would have been aware of that. Heading into the last 5 minutes, if they're holding on to a result, they're thinking, "Oh Christ, here we go again." Just don't concede, just don't concede. And as soon as you start thinking like that, you're going to concede. So they need to eradicate that mindset from the players' heads. And the only kind of ways to go about that is getting rid of all the players, the manager, and bringing in a whole load of new ones.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like you said about the predictability. It was a bit like when at home games, every time the ball went out for a corner, the noise from the home fans was like the same as, when a player gets put clean for on goal. Yeah. And everyone in the home fans go, oh, like it's that noise. Yeah. It was every time it went out for a corner. And that mentality, that fragility crept into the players. You could see it was because they panicked when the ball dropped, and clearances would go straight up in the air. And it is like that. The mentality, that's one thing Rodgers kind of said that was correct, but he also attributed it to the fans in a completely nonsensical way, was that the fans' reaction to things does seep into the players. It's not the fans' fault that the players can't play out from the back. That's his fault. He's the coach. But that whole they were a really weak and fragile team mentally. And
really
that's the one thing Maresca needs to change. He could bring in 11 players who are just physical lumps who can't really play football, but as long as they are strong-willed, good players, like in terms of their mentality, that's already an improvement on last season, because they're not going to bow out in games and they're not going to let pressure get to them. I just think that like you said, I think there does need to be an overhaul of the squad. I think it's nice that he's trying to think about keeping some of those players, but I just think like we're trying to hold out for X amount of money for Dennis Pratt. I know you've got very strong opinions about Dennis Pratt, but just get him gone. I mean, but you did your 10-minute Dennis Pratt watch at Fulham, didn't you?
Pratt watch.
But I was the same. I wasn't.
Jack was there as well. Were you talking about him or?
Well,
I've done Daka watch before, but I change it up each week, and it's amusing as one another each week. Yeah.
The one but I remember when I was listening to you say that on your show, I was like, do you know what? Like, I didn't specifically watch Pratt, but every time the ball went to him, I just lost interest because I was like, nothing's going to happen. Like they're either going to get the ball or it's just going to go straight back to the right back. Nothing's going to happen. And I forgot he was on the pitch after a while. I was just like, we might as well have had no one on the right wing. But yeah, I think, like I said, we could go on for this.
It's on like 90 grand a week as well, by the way. Oh, do you know what I mean?
Wow.
This is a guy that was there exactly. I mean, you could speak to Premier League fans and show them a picture of Dennis Pratt, and they wouldn't have a fucking clue who he is, right? And we're paying him 90 grand a week, and he's done.
90k. I mean, he hardly gets into Leicester's team. He's average at best.
I mean, he's technically a nice footballer. The problem is, Harry, with him and a load of others, is he doesn't want to be at the football club. So if you don't want to be at the football club, then go. And Leicester have just had this inability. I mean, to be fair, not too dissimilar to Spurs at times, but to get rid of players that don't want to be there.
They keep them on until the end of the contract. They're sitting here paying the highest wages, like you say, with
they're trying to get money for them. They're trying to get transfer fees for them. When in reality, if you're getting €2 million or €3 million for Dennis Pratt, just get it done, because what it saves you in millions of wages and over the course of the year is far more important than having that bad smell lurking around the football club, picking up a huge wage, and not only offering nothing on the pitch, but kind of dragging everyone down with him. Dennis Pratt wasn't the only one. He was, one of many players in that team who just did not want to be there, and we were stuck with them. We were stuck with them, and they dragged us down, quite literally.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think, we could go on about this for a long time. But one thing I will say, just while I've got Jake and we are talking about Leicester, I hate to be that person, but I felt very vindicated for my 5-minute stint on your show a couple of weeks back, because I felt like at the time you didn't like that I said we were going down when I said we were after the Everton game. But not that I'm happy that I've been vindicated, but I just
Jack, one thing we haven't actually mentioned on the podcast, and I don't know if you'll thank me for saying this, but do you remember when we played Brighton and it was the week after we'd had Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, on, and he was basically telling us how fucked we were basically financially. And
that was a good listen, because I was just going, we're in trouble, whether we stay up or go down. That's fantastic.
So we had Kieran on, and then we played Brighton that weekend, and we went actually and met up with Kieran at the local hero beforehand for a pint. And Jack, our Jack, bet with Kieran's mate 50 quid that Leicester would get relegated. And I was looking at him thinking, Jack, are you for real? I was like, because we at this point we weren't even in the relegation places. Now, of course, we weren't playing well, and I didn't think we'd go down. But Jack, and others did think we would, and to the extent that Jack, and he hasn't mentioned things on the podcast since. I'm not sure if he's embarrassed to or just doesn't want to because he thinks he'll get pelters. I've sold him out now and thrown him under the bus. But he bet. Well,
less people listen to us, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But just don't put that on social media. But Jack bet 50 quid Leicester would get relegated, so you weren't the only one.
Yeah, I just think I could just see it coming a mile off. Like you said, we were so predictable that was that predictable. It was just the way it's going, the mentality, everything. It was going that way. But what we'll do is we'll jump up to somebody who, I'm not being funny, our conversations have been very different in the last few weeks. One of us is basically fed up of football and can't wait for this season to be behind us. The other one can't shut up about it. Can you, Euan? No. So you've got a much more positive outlook on next season and what's coming up this summer, I suppose, haven't you? So you've just has it been confirmed yet, Tonali?
No, not officially, but it's done.
Yeah, but I mean that's on paper a very, very good signing. Heavy links at the moment with Livramento as well from Southampton, which again would be an excellent signing. You're not going to be changing manager, I don't think, anytime soon.
Well, I hope not.
What's the plan for the summer? What do you think the right course of action is?
I've never ever, and I've been watching us since 1999. I've genuinely never felt so secure in the recruitment team, in the manager, in the board, in the way the club's run. If you get a minute, look at the amount of recruitment we've done within our scouting system over the last 12 months. It's a joke. We've gone and pinched the best scouts from all over the place. We've pinched West Ham, Southampton, City, Man United, Liverpool, like analysis, scouts. It's ridiculous. There's a plan in place, not just to buy first team players that are ready-made or nearly ready-made. There is a real structure in place to try and build a club from the bottom up. And the saying that our owner keeps coming out with, Mehrdad Gadusi, is, and I met him at the Shearer do last year. He said the one thing he kept saying was, we're going to jump through all the hoops, we're going to do it properly, we're going to build a skyscraper, but we're only on the first floor at the minute. And 12 months on, we're in the Champions League. It doesn't feel real. Like, I can't quite get my head around the fact that it's come around so quick. Now, I don't necessarily think we'll finish in the top four again next season, but it's more the fact that we've proven we can do it with players that were written off only 2 years ago. People were saying, well, what do Newcastle fans expect? I mean, I watched those lads, and Joe Linton was someone who I beat the drum for massively because he's not a number 9. I didn't think he was a midfielder either, to be fair. But
I think he was a footballer when I've watched him play.
There was competence. He grafted his bollocks off. He put himself about. I couldn't be prouder for him. I feel like a proud older brother that he's gone and played for Brazil and scored in his debut. He deserves it more than anyone else because he took some amount of flack. And Eddie Howe has changed this team from being a bunch of kind of misfits all muddled together, decent bits of recruitment with no structure, to a properly fully functioning animal, like a machine. We overrun teams, and if you don't overrun teams, we can beat them with individual quality, like Isaac when he turns up and does little bits of mad. It's phenomenal. So when it comes to recruitment, I've never had so much faith, but it feels like the Maddison deal, there was too many obstacles in the way, there was too many hurdles, like Jake said, like Harry said, there's too many things that seem to suit him going elsewhere than us. It's not to say I think it was impossible, but I think it was too many things to get over, and I almost think that probably would end up becoming an issue long term. Maybe want to move away in a couple of years, or if we don't make Champions League, he probably wants away again. So I'm not necessarily disappointed. If he'd come, I'd have been pleased. I'm not actually that disappointed he hasn't come. We all know he's a very, very capable footballer. I think there's Spozlai or Sloboslai, however you say it, links are very interesting, because if he does come in, he's one of those players that's kind of ready to burst. He's ready to blow. I like the fact that we're looking at that level where they've got that step up to make. Tonali was kind of out the blue. I know we were linked to Barella. I don't think that was ever actually feasible. I don't think he'd have come. I'm not sure we'd have paid the fee. I'm not sure we'd have paid the wages. And he's a massive Inter Milan fan, whereas AC Milan have just lost Maldini. We've gone and taken advantage of it. We're bringing in a very, very highly rated player who's probably going to play in tandem with Bruno, which allows to free him up. We've got a few players we need to get out, but a lot of them are going to leave on a free anyway. It bodes well. It looks like we've got a plan in place to actually move forward step by step. And what I love most is a lot of the players that are actually involved now were here anyway. They've been here all that time. And I think that's where, and this is not a dig at other clubs, but you know when certain clubs in the league, and I won't name names, they just want money thrown at things all the time. We need this, we need that, we need the next, we need this, we need a striker, we need a left back, we need a centre half. Sometimes there's so much to be said for actually coaching a footballer. Just why not just not write off a season completely in the way that we don't compete. But let's just say, right, like I think Ange will do this, Harry. I really do. I think he will go in and he will have this. Your fucking head has to be right to play for me, and if it's not, then leave now. But what I do want from you is I want commitment to what we're trying to achieve. And I think Howe's got that. He's got that in abundance. I mean, Joe Willock looks like a completely different player now. You've got players like Almiron, who I really don't rate. I would.
Oh, you hate him, honestly. Even when he was playing well, Euan was just like, he's crap. It's like watching Jake. The best comparison, Jake, is like Harvey Barnes. Like, you know how Harvey Barnes' numbers are excellent.
Output machine.
He's like, even when he was in,
Almiron's numbers are shit. They're not even as good as Harvey Barnes.
He was the best. He was the best player in the world for like 3 weeks.
He was.
And do you know what? I couldn't have been happier for him because he seems a lovely lad. But fuck me, he's shit. He's got one foot. He comes back on himself all the time. But my point is, Eddie Howe managed to pull something from him that I didn't think was capable. You've got players like Fabian Schär, who came in for £3 million under Rafa, who was only told by Steve Bruce he could play in a back three, who's literally just been part of the best defence in the league or joint best defence in the league. Like these lads have proven themselves worthy, and I love the fact that there's now a bit of a fuck you attitude, a bit of a galvanised like siege mentality within the club, and I love it. And I think whatever happens now, they've bought so much time, as in Howe has, the players have. And yes, I am a big critic of Almiron, and it probably goes against what I've just said, but I'm way more open to just go, do you know what? Whatever happens, happens, and I'm living. I say a dream. I've been to Wembley now. I hadn't been to Wembley in my life in the last 12 months since the takeover. I got to Wembley, and I'm going to see Champions League football again. The last time I watched us play was against teams like Juventus, where we beat them. We got beat by Barcelona. We played into Milan. It's such a nice feeling to be happy about my club again, and I'm so proud of where them lads have come from and what we are. So
I've got a question.
It's really nice.
I've got a question for you, Euan, because obviously you're going in. Is it pot 3 or pot 4 you're going to be in?
We're pot 4. We're right at the bottom. So the dregs.
So Jake will probably agree with me here to an extent. I think Harry will from different seasons. It depends, but like they've been in Europe loads, so I mean it's irrelevant. No offense, Harry. But Jake, obviously, when we went into Europe, we were pot 1, and we got obviously massive. We are huge.
Pot 4. Imagine being that crap in pot 4 in the Champions League.
I know, having all that money and just being pot 4.
I wouldn't dare.
But so we were in pot 1, and obviously we got a group of Copenhagen, Bruges, Porto, and for little old Leicester, it was like this is amazing. We're in the Champions League. I mean, I still have weirdly incredible dreams about just being at King Power and hearing the Champions League music play and actually watching a the Europa League music. It's shit in comparison.
How loud is the Champions League music, by the way? Isn't it just insane?
The crescendo at the end is it reverberates through your entire body.
It's unbelievable, yeah.
Whereas the Europa League music is just jarring. It's honestly, it's just, and then when it's the same music in the when you're in the Conference League and it's just that was quite. I'm surprised by that, that's all right. But in the Conference League, it's just in the Conference League, it's the same. It's the same shit but green. Being in pot 4, you're going to get bigger clubs than we did.
Yeah.
Now, from a Leicester point of view, we got to the quarterfinal and we got knocked out from a dodgy penalty decision to we'd have still gone out on away goals, but that's irrelevant. We got knocked out to a dodgy penalty decision away in Madrid. Would you rather play a load of big teams and sort of play the occasion, or go deep in the competition?
For me, I'd rather have the big teams turn up to St James's and prove a point.
What if you don't prove a point? What if you don't prove a point? No,
you get done like 6-0 by Bayern.
We are,
but you still get the 3 big games.
I would take that, because what I do think we do as a club is we project what we can be quite well when it comes across on telly, and you hear the noise and you hear the atmosphere. I think one thing that people are kind of...
It's a marketing exercise is what we're saying. It's just...
In a weird way. In a really weird way, yeah, because if you turn on the Champions League and you see Newcastle, no offense, Copenhagen, no one's going to stick that on. If you see Real Madrid at St James's, I think people are going to watch that game. I think clubs are going to look at it.
That just buys into the Super League narrative, though, Euan, and we don't stand for that on this channel.
No. I'm not necessarily.
I could disprove that, actually, Euan. So when Leicester had Copenhagen, Club Bruges, Porto, Sevilla, and Atletico Madrid, so we got to the quarterfinals, obviously, but no real superstar glamour team, which I think, Jack, we're all in agreement we kind of wished we did have. Leicester made more money in TV money that year than anyone else because everyone wanted to watch Leicester in the Champions League for the first time.
Yeah.
Like globally.
It was played loads in. I mean, Thailand's obviously a great example, but it was played massively all over the world.
For you though, because you won the league and you had that like momentum of what you achieved with such a shoestring budget. I think I don't think it's wrong to hear that. I think people will watch Newcastle no matter what because I think of what we created as a ground, as a fan base, and the flags and everything like that. But I do think if you were to bring, hypothetically, let's say it's Madrid, let's say it's Bayern Munich, and they turn up at St James's, I don't think we're better than them. I don't think we're anywhere near their level in terms of football. But we've proven this season when City came, we were 3-1 up against City, and it was only because De Bruyne and Haaland turned up that they got a draw. We can turn it on, and I think under the lights at St James's, we can be a threat. And even if we just do one of them and go out, let's say we beat one of them at home, and we create that memorable night like the 3-2 Barcelona, like the 1-0 Juventus, that still live in the memories of a lot of Newcastle fans, that then breeds confidence that it can be done again. We have got that potential to do that to teams. And I personally would love to have, because I know it because I sit in the Gallagher, when you see the two teams come out and let's say it's Barcelona, I genuinely think there's a definite fucking get into these type thing. It's one of them. Like, let's hit them straight away. Let's get stuck in. And I'd much prefer that because I think that's something that would those players would thrive off just because of the way Howe sets up his teams. So yeah, I think there's an argument for both, and I'm not going to be picky, but I think if you could give me one or the other, I'd take three of the bigger names to try and maybe prove a point and almost be like, well, do you know what? We might go to your place and you might batter us, but you come to our place, we're going to make it hard for you. Whether we beat you or not, we'll try and make it difficult. And hopefully other players take notice, and it's a bit of a marketing exercise, like Jack says, and goes, oh, well, they've got a big project there. And do you know what? That looked like a class night. I'd love to be part of that. So that's probably my outlook on it.
Okay, yeah, we'll just stop you there because Harry needs to go. Harry, sorry for keeping you over the 45 minutes. Yeah, go for it, mate.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to say regarding Newcastle in Champions League, does it concern you? Obviously, being in the Champions League, perhaps it being a distraction from the league. Because sitting here now, being honest with you, I thought Newcastle done a fantastic job. Eddie Howe in particular, what he'd done with the players. You know, it seems so unrealistic. You know that transition from the owners took over that quick to get you in Champions League football. Is it a worry, obviously, that you know with that Champions League is a distraction? So I can't see Newcastle personally finishing in the top four this season. But I want to know: do you think it'll be a distraction or not?
We could call it a distraction, but it's probably the best distraction we could ask for. I think if you were going to offer us a distraction, it's probably the best one that we would want, because I know when you look at the league form, we tailed off at times, and it was often when we got to the final of the Carabao Cup and we kind of tailed off, but then we picked it up again. I do believe that we will have another good season. I think it might be like a 5th or a 6th in the league, but yeah. I don't think a distraction's necessarily a bad thing, because again, it proves the point that, well, we've got here once, who's to say we can't do it again? And I think recruitment's a massive thing. If we can bring in players where, let's say Livramento, let's say Trippier can't play every game this season, Livramento coming in at right back's a great backup option. And I don't think Livramento's necessarily a backup if you were going to label him as that. I think he's better than that. We just need to make sure we're very clever with our squad spaces. We need to make sure we've got versatile players who can cover different positions, and hopefully it means we're hard to beat in both league and cup competitions.
Right. I'm just going to quickly ask Harry one more question, because he does need to go. Right, give us. I said we wouldn't do predictions for next season, but we will do it anyway. Harry, and I'll ask all of us this question actually before we move on to our final piece in the episode. Harry, quick fire answer. Where do Spurs finish next season? First season of Postecoglou, where do you finish?
I'm going to be honest, 9th. I could seriously think it'll be 9th.
Fair enough. I mean, pessimistic, but I mean, we love a bit of pessimism. We love a bit of pessimism on this show. It's all I've been all season. Cheers, Harry. Before you go though, where can people find you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you very much for having me on it. It was a pleasure. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime.
Obviously, speaking for the last couple of weeks, it's great to come on. You can find me if you want to follow me there. My Twitter handle there, Harry Scarfe22. But most importantly, my channel, ScarfeySpursTalk, so close to 1K. As I said, that rebranded. in that February, March. I took 2 months away, I think it was in the end, away from uploading to improve the channels, and so many different things changed the way I do content, the way the channel worked, and the people on it as well. And it's great to see now. The views are great, the numbers are great, and the feedback is great. So it's great to hear. So getting to 1K for the new season starts would be absolutely fantastic. What I call wrapping off a successful year in the end for the channel. Because 1K is a big milestone. I'm sure lots of you can relate for a channel.
Yeah.
That does for any football club. So that'd be fantastic. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, Harry. Yeah, honestly, it's really good content that Harry does. So please go and subscribe. I'll put the links to that in the YouTube and Spotify description. But yeah, Harry, thank you so much for giving up your evening and coming to see us. Take care.
You. Take care, guys. Thank you. See you.
See you, mate. All right. Euan's also gone for some reason. Jake's just what a much more intimate setting we're now in. I don't know where Euan's gone.
Maybe we just get to talk about Leicester now. Thank God those guys have gone.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know.
Now the episode really starts.
Well, yeah, to be fair. He's back. We can start chewing the fat about that. But I will ask you next. On honest answer.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult to do that. Like we said at the start, it's difficult to do that without all the stuff happening. Where do you think Leicester will? You don't need to give me a position. Maybe a automatics, playoffs, outside. Yeah. What do you reckon?
Go big, Jake. Go big.
we should absolutely be automatic. Of course we should. Do you know what I mean? This was the most expensively assembled squad in history to get relegated from the Premier League. Yeah, most of those players have gone. But what it also means is with the players that are being sold, because ordinarily if a team gets relegated, they've got a crap team. We've actually got sellable assets. So by the time we have sold these players, whatever that may well happen, we'll have the biggest war chest that the Championship has ever seen. So do you know what I mean? This should be the best team in the Championship that they've seen in a long, long time. So irrespective of how late we get things done, we still should be top two. We should be top two. Do you know what I mean? I'm always going to have that little kind of air of negativity in the back of my head telling me that, prepare yourself for the worst, because that's the safest way to be, isn't it, as a football fan? But the reality is we absolutely should be up there. The only thing I would say was that last year the Championship was a weak league. Burnley were obviously good, but even then, if I'm being brutally honest, I think they were allowed to be as good as what they were because the rest of the league wasn't that good. Sheffield United have had financial problems throughout the course of the league, but were comfortably second. Middlesbrough, I think, were third, but they started the season when Michael Carrick came in the relegation places. Luton, Coventry, Sunderland. With all due respect, you wouldn't have predicted any of them really to have got in the playoffs, and that was mainly
the playoff final was a poor game, wasn't it? And I know it was two teams with very similar styles cancelling each other out, but also there wasn't a lot of quality on show. And I get that it buys into your point massively.
And the three teams that went down last year, what were West Brom, Norwich, and Watford. And was it West Brom?
Yeah.
Was it?
Wasn't West Brom last season?
No,
Sheffield, no.
Norwich. Was it? No. Who went down with Norwich, Watford, and somebody else?
Burnley, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Burnley.
Yeah, they bounced straight back, didn't they?
No, that's right. Yeah, well done.
But those two teams are weak.
I lost that. Sorry. No, yeah.
But this time around, West Brom will be stronger. Norwich will be stronger. Watford will be stronger. The likes of Sunderland who did miss out, they would have improved. And then the three teams that have come down, Leeds, Southampton, and Leicester, should be in pretty decent positions to bounce straight back. So I think you could make an argument for 6 or 7 teams for going for automatic. So I think that's the only thing. One of the things that would count against Leicester, that the league should be a lot tougher than what it was last time around. But yeah, that all being said, we absolutely should be going for automatic. There's no doubt about that.
I think there's always one team that surprises people in the Championship.
Exactly.
As well, And I'll be honest, you won't like me saying this, Jake, but I think it might be Ipswich.
Bit of
a sleeping giant, aren't they? And I think it's like a bit like Southampton and Norwich did. They both flew up the leagues really quickly, and Ipswich have got the potential to do that.
It's momentum, isn't it? And I'd probably point in the case of Sunderland last year that they still had pretty much the same squad from League One, but when you're able to keep that winning feeling amongst a group of players, and you've been kind of banging at the door of League One for a little while, it usually means that you are good enough, but for whatever reason you haven't quite managed to get it done. So it means that when you do finally get it done, you are very much ready for it. So I think Ipswich are absolutely ready for the Championship, and they shouldn't have any issues in terms of surviving. They'll be looking at mid-table and, who knows, maybe even a push into the playoffs. But yeah, Kieran McKenna there as a manager, we spoke about him on the podcast as a potential link for Leicester. And I think they did have a little look at him. So yeah, I think he's a very, very decent manager. So yeah, if he does well there, don't expect him to be around at Ipswich in 12 months' time, because we know how mad the Championship can be in terms of hiring and firing of managers from there. But yeah, no, Ipswich decent side.
Brilliant. Right, I'm gonna do something now which our regular viewers love. If you've not listened to the Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast, I did mention this the first time we did it. This is something that I stole, and I'm going to put it on record that I stole it. It doesn't quite have
to trademark this, don't I?
Yeah, it doesn't quite have a catchy jingle like yours does, so it's already losing.
Euan can sing it, can't he? He's always...
Oh.
There we are, sorted.
Yeah.
Trademark that.
Yeah.
Just shout me when you need me.
So it's time for obscure footballer of the week, and I think I've got this one is either going to be, and I say this every time, Euan will back me here. I say this every time. This one's either going to be really easy and you're going to get it straight away, or we'll never get it. I thought that Euan was going to get spoilers if you've not listened to the one we did last week. I thought that Euan was going to get Facundo Savard really quickly.
Oh, nice!
But I had to go to the very last thing, which was every time he scored, he put his mask on.
Yeah.
But this one, I think,
balls with that last one, like, didn't you?
This one could be the same, or it could be really easy. So essentially, Jake, the first time he's played it, it's any sort of Premier League player. They either have to be relatively iconic or have played a large number of games. They have to be like iconic for a reason or played a number of games.
So not played like 16 minutes on loan in 1996.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pick players like. Who's an example for Leicester?
I was going to say Ricardo Quaresma at Chelsea.
Yeah, but that would have been a great shout, to be fair. But
we've got to the point now with
music, boys.
We've got to the point now with our one, because Rick is so good at it that we're doing literally players that haven't actually played a minute for Leicester, and somehow he still gets it.
Yeah. Well, it's the Peter Gilbert one where it's like, how did you know his first name was Eric?
Yeah.
I forgot Peter Gilbert played for us, and that was like when I was really first, and it's a really odd, this is an odd statement I'm about to say. That's when I was really starting to fall in love with watching Leicester, and we were awful. It became part of my routine. Anyway, so first clue, very, very similar start for as to who are you. I was born on the 12th of July, 1990.
Okay.
32 years old, 32. Still playing. Euan, you'll be proud of me again. I've picked another birthplace that I probably can't pronounce or am pronouncing wrong.
Every time, honestly. Yeah.
So I was born in Aguelva Cacem in Portugal. In Portugal.
Right.
And I made my professional debut for Estrella de Amadora in 2009.
Okay.
Nothing yet.
I love how he pauses as if we're going to go.
Yeah.
Hey, Jake can back me up here. If you've listened to their podcast, Rick would get that. Like for a Leicester player,
weird, mate. He's weird.
That he'd know that straight away. Yeah.
Right, go on then.
Internationally, actually, no, I'll give you a good stat. This one is completely irrelevant, but I really enjoyed this. The very first line of his profile says, abandoned by his parents at a young age, he grew up in a homeless shelter.
Shit, I laughed at the wrong time there.
He grew up in a homeless shelter near Lisbon. If that is helpful to anybody, but I just really enjoyed that. I need to get that on there.
I've got a guess.
Go on.
Is it Bebe?
It is Bebe, yeah.
Oh, shut up.
He works in the media. He's got an advantage.
Jay, I'm not being funny. You've got all of the arrangements of all the children across Portugal or something.
Yeah, Jake was straight away like, I knew Bebe. I knew it. He was abandoned by his parents.
I
do remember that as part of the story, that he'd had that upbringing in Portuguese. He's probably about 32, and he's a bit of a cult figure, isn't he? So that was easy, mate. Come on.
I have. If you want, I have got a backup.
Do the backup so I can try and redeem myself.
Jake, have you got time?
Like,
yeah, go for it.
If you got time for the backup,
got time for a quiz.
All right, this one is interesting. Again, another one that could go either way. Right. I forgot I've got somebody who works in the media on here. I need to make it more difficult, don't I? Okay. I was born on the 24th of September, 1974.
Oh, right. So what's that make him?
48 years old.
I thought I had that one.
Yeah, knew it. 48 years old. And I was born in Borash in Sweden.
Okay.
I made my debut in 1996 for Elfsborg, scoring 15 goals in 22 games.
Johan Elmander.
I think I've got it, but I'm not going to say anything.
No, go for it. Give us a. Let's just show off.
Is it Henrik Larsson?
No, it's not. No, it's not. But that would have been if you'd have pulled that out of the bag. If you'd have said that, I'd have retired the game.
Look, Jake, we've really enjoyed having you. But
I'll stick myself on mute.
Boiling Jack's moment.
Right, go on then.
To be fair, Euan, I'm the quizmaster. It's you that's in the firing line here. I retired in 2008 after my second spell with Elfsborg.
Freddie Lundberg.
No. I've got a quite embarrassing record considering the position I played in, which was 67 goals in 275 appearances.
Ooh.
Any guesses?
2008. I think no, he's too young. I mean, I'll throw it out anyway, but I'm fairly certain it's wrong. But he was Swedish and didn't score a lot of goals and played in the Premier League. Johan Elmander?
No, Euan's already said that. He was wrong.
Oh, did he?
Sorry, but it's a good guess again. I will give you a honour that he's won in England. Can't tell you who with, but won the championship, which was then the first division in 2003-04.
Okay.
And I'll give you the list of teams that he played for in England.
Okay.
So
I'll get it now.
I think you might. I think Jake might actually. So I joined Portsmouth in '96 until '98, before I moved to Tyrol Innsbruck in 1998. Before coming back to England, where I played in a series of stints for Palace, Charlton, Derby, and then Norwich.
Matthias Svensson.
It is Matthias Svensson, yes.
Fuck's sake.
Do you know the problem with that is that Jake used to do a lot of work with Norwich, so I kind of thought that as soon as I said Norwich, I was like, he's going to get it.
And I had a feeling Svensson, and I was just waiting for the clubs. As soon as you said Charlton and Norwich, then that was just the confirmation I needed.
Do you know what? This is what's it called? What's that? Is it like what's that thing called where you think something happened but it didn't? What's that called? Is it like
Deja vu.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking it's like Stockholm. What's the thing where like you think you've seen something, not deja vu, but like it's not true. Like, there's like the fruit of the loom thing, and some people think there's the basket in the background, but there isn't.
I don't know. I mean, Stockholm syndrome is something very different to that.
Yeah, no, it is. You're right. I realize. Is it? It's not the Mandela effect, is it, or whatever it's called?
I thought it was deja vu, to be honest.
No, fair enough. Okay, whatever it is, anybody
who's seen something that hasn't really happened before it happens.
Oh, I don't know.
Have you already had a dream where I got Matthias Svensson right and then that just happened?
No,
that's deja vu.
No, my point was where I could have sworn that Matthias Svensson played for Southampton, but when I was looking him up, I was like,
there was a Marcus Svensson.
And there's Anders Svensson as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Andreas
All
Svensson
right, lads, I've got good knowledge, but you're showing me right over here. Jesus.
Now the good one. What was the one that I got the other week that you told me? Was it Jaden Anthony? And I got it just off the non-league guess.
Jaden Anthony, yeah, he got it off the non-league club. We're 2 questions in.
Like that.
I think the only reason I'm pretty sure the only reason I got that is because we were linked with him at one point last season, weren't we? And
so I don't think I even know the name. Jaden Anthony.
Yeah, he's that really very bang average winger for Bournemouth.
Right, that's a new one for me. So
yeah, but we were linked with him last summer, and I did it. I googled him, and I think that's where I remembered it from. That's what I'm saying.
Try it on your pod. Try it on your pod.
Rick will get it. But that's the point we're at. We're gonna have to start doing players linked with Leicester because Rick now knows every single one. But people who have visited Leicester, we'll have to get to that point to make it hard.
Yeah. Anybody who's been viewed in like the director's box at Leicester in one game. But Jordan will have no chance with that one. He'll absolutely stink the place out there.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Bless him.
Right, Jake, thank you so much for giving up your evening. Those of you who haven't checked out the Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast, I strongly recommend that you do, because it has been a great source of catharsis for a lot of people this season. I know that you are massively loved amongst the Leicester community. So honestly, keep up your good work, boys. Jake, where can people find you?
Yeah, so pretty much everywhere now. We are on YouTube as well, but predominantly, Spotify, Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast, on Twitter and Instagram as well. And then another quick cheeky plug for our live show at the end of next month, the Memphis Hub in Leicester. We've got live music, Jersey Bud. We'll be singing and hoping. We just need to secure who the legends are, but we're going to be joined on stage by a couple of Leicester legends. And to be honest, the entrance fee alone is worth just watching Ric Flair wearing probably some kind of Hawaiian shirt, getting pissed on stage, shouting obscenities at people in the crowd. So, I'm going to make what better things could you do of your evening?
I'm going to make a recommendation, Jake. I reckon you invest in, those full like Leicester Hawaiian get-ups that they've now got in the club shop.
Yeah, the conversation's been had, Jack.
I reckon that's definitely a
formal
attire.
Yes. It
honestly,
may well happen.
Yeah, but no, thank you so much for giving up your evening with us tonight, Jake. I know you got an early start in the morning, so really appreciate it.
Guys, absolute pleasure. And thanks for having me on. And Newcastle, good luck for the season. We'll see what happens.
Well, Jack is gradually making Leicester my second team. It's just one of them things. So, like, I really am hoping you bounce back. Genuinely,
he's fully invested now. Honestly, he asks more about Leicester than he does Newcastle. To be fair,
Plenty to talk about anyway.
Really grateful for you coming on.
Yeah, no worries, guys. You take care, and we'll speak soon.
Cheers, Jake. See you later.
Hey, bye.
Bye.